I think some organizations probably need to be a little bit more data informed than they are. They need to root themselves more in data than they are. But the data alone, especially today, given AI, given, something that we're all long familiar with now at this point, but GDPR and other, privacy, challenges, we can't see the whole picture. We need to bring our own creativity and our own judgment. Hopefully, we're at the point where we're no longer having the conversation that says we need to prove the value of marketing. Instead, the question is, why do we want marketing in the conversation, right? Why do we want marketing there? And so the ways to look at that is not as far as, okay, what percentage of pipeline came from marketing or was marketing influence, but hey, let's look at all the accounts and the opportunities that had marketing engagement and had a certain threshold of marketing engagement, and how do those behave differently?
Do you think that we are finally moving beyond the obsession of MQLs or content syndicated leads, or they still have a place when used correctly? This is a debatable question though. What metrics do you believe best reflect the buyer's progress today?
Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning in, where we connect the dots between MarTech and marketing landscape. Stay tuned to MarTech 360 as we explore key strategies for your marketing success.
Hello and welcome to MarTech 360 Conversations powered by Data Demand, where we explore the trends, technology, and ideas shaping the future of B2B. Today's topic touches almost every marketing and revenue leader. For years, we have optimized around funnels, MQLs, SQL, pipeline, stages, content syndicated leads. But the buyers don't necessarily follow our process. They research independently. They involve multiple stakeholders. They move back and forth. And increasingly, they are competing much more, much more earlier in their journey before even they speak to the sales team. So what happens when we stop designing around our funnel and start designing around how buyers actually buy? To help us answer that, I'm delighted to welcome Carolyn Kolb, Senior Director of Marketing Performance Technology at Blue Yonder. Carolyn, before we jump into the discussion, I'll give a little bit more of an intro of yours, to my audience. Carolyn brings more than a decade of experience in marketing operations, analytics, and revenue performance, helping global companies elevate or leverage how to use data, technology, and buyer insights. Throughout her career, she has led a very complex MarTech initiative, including MarTech Stack, advanced attribution and measurement strategies, and worked closely with the CMOs, marketing directors, sales directors to create that more connected and buyer-centric go-to-market approaches. Carolyn, once again, welcome to MarTech Conversations.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Let's start with the big picture. Buyers don't follow our funnels. So why are we still designing it around them? And my question is, how do you define a buyer-led journey in today's B2B environment?
Absolutely. I think, you highlighted a little bit of it in your intro, but I think the big key is that really understanding that our buyers and our buyer groups are all operating their own unique set of circumstances. No buyer, no account, no individual person is the same, right? From a company perspective, depending on what you're selling, if you're supporting some sort of transformation, they're going to be in their different stage of transformation. They're going to have different budget realities. Unfortunately, that is the factor in all of this. Budget isn't there. Timing isn't right. That's not going to, that's going to be a challenge. And also, and every individual person, right? We have buyer groups. We talked about, hey, the buyer group is growing, but every person involved in the decision process is coming with their own unique context and history. They may have worked with you or a competitor in a past life. They may have no idea who you are and may be just learning about the fact that they have a problem that needs a solution that, a solution like yours can solve. So there's that, right? Is understanding that not every account is the same. And also, as you said, there's so much more information available to buyers. Buyers are not interested in talking to a salesperson, having them educate, them from the start, as they were maybe 10, 15 years ago. They have all of this at their fingertips. So from a go-to-market perspective, I think a buyer-led journey is really about meeting our buyers where they are and understanding that the most amazing marketing email, the most effective salesperson is really not going to be able to drive a buyer faster down the quote unquote funnel than their circumstances will allow them to. So it's just about what we can do as a go-to-market organization, marketers and sales, is make sure that we can get the information in front of them to meet them where they are in their journey, so that when the time is right, they they will then come to us and for them to supplement.
Right. Right. Fair enough. I understand that, so I still believe or feel that there is a disconnect, but, and why do you think that disconnect exists?
I think it's fear of change. I think it's, really where I see it is, our marketers and salespeople are, maybe coming from organizations where this was just how it was done. And it's simpler. That's like one of my favorite, even, from this perspective, from the perspective of analytics, what I like to say and had an old boss that would always say it was, marketing is complex, and it's a whole lot more complex than it used to be. And thinking about, hey, there's this beautiful funnel that we can follow is a whole lot easier to wrap your mind around. It's easier to track. You can think about, I need to be measuring my conversion rates down the funnel, and that's going to tell me what's working and what's not. The idea that, hey, this funnel doesn't always work, it doesn't always exist, and instead it's a big series of arrows back and forth up and down the journey, is a whole lot more difficult. So I think it's really, I think the disconnect is that it's hard and it takes a lot of work and, aligned leadership to really get organizations to make this shift.
Absolutely. And you're right. Back in the days, probably there was only one, funnel. Or probably today there are multiple. There are social media is acting as one, newsletters are acting as one, podcast is another one. Content creation is another, and probably that is why the traditional funnel is breaking. And we all have grown up with the language of MQL, SQL, and pipeline stages. Where do you think the traditional model starts to fall short?
I think across the board. I will say I do think there are certain situations where a traditional funnel, I think, makes sense. Like, I don't think we will ever get rid of the concept of an MQL. I might call it something different. But when I think about, particularly from that stage in the funnel of, hey, thinking about an MQL as you have, both your inbound and your outbound MQLs. Outbound, I think less so. I think that's where the funnel breaks down. When we think about inbound, that's someone that has raised their hand and says, that's what you're looking for, right? And this buyer-led journey, the best thing that you could ask for is then someone coming to your website, filling out a form saying, I am ready to talk to someone. Like, that, in my view, is the goal of the product of a successful buyer-led journey. You have educated them where well before that. And as you mentioned, and I'm sure as everyone knows, there's so much research out there that's saying that 80% of the buying journey is happening before that moment. But when they come to your website and they fill out that form and they reach out, then I think then you could have a little bit more of a traditional, you're going to have higher conversion rates for sure for that. But, I think the idea of, hey, we've got an individual lead that we're going to work on progressing. I think that still has a place. Beyond that, I think it really is about because you're not going to get, if you're not going to get that, like, the goal is getting that MQL or, that inbound request. And, if you're focusing on specific outbound efforts, all you can really do is focus on that research, getting in front of them so that when their time is right, they're going to come in.
Right. So, can I say that it is very, very important, the traditional lead gen, or, it gives, creates visibility for the entire, the prospecting journey. And it's how we use that information to create that change and, act as a catalyst to move them or educate them into further journeys towards the buying patterns. Would it be okay to say?
Yeah,
Perfect.
I 100% agree. Yep.
Absolutely. And, you have helped lead this transformation, more than once, within multiple organizations. In your opinion, what typical triggers the organizations need to rethink on the buyer journey?
I think there's two things that I have seen. One, I think it's observing the data, right? You can see, hey, what we're doing right now isn't working. Either pipeline's going down or your MQL conversion is dropping. MQL was king, and that's that traditional funnel isn't working anymore. But honestly, I think what I have seen in my experience, it is often a new leader coming in that understands this, right? That has had this experience in another role, and or is just reading the landscape as it is and really championing the change. Because I don't think, I have not seen where I've seen it this transformation be successful is when there's been a very strong individual champion, or champion of the change that is then focused on alignment across the organization and really championing it down. If you don't have that in the right leader, it becomes a lot more challenging.
I completely agree. And, which is more harder, changing the systems or changing the mindsets?
Mindset, 500%.
And
yeah. I mean, as the person that's responsible for changing the systems, I can say that's complicated. And depending on the state of your data, that is no small feat. And that takes a lot of work and a lot of coordination. But it doesn't work if the mindsets of the full go-to-market organization, both sales and marketing, is shifted, because it is a very different way of working.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, changing the mindset is the most difficult, thing one can go in his or her own human transformation. Can you share a lesson learned, or perhaps something that didn't go very well according to your plan, and there was something that amazing turned out from that?
For sure. I think where it doesn't go to plan is, as I said, when you don't have the right people champion, the right champion internally. And I've seen that, right? I think generally there's agreement that this is something that we need to do, but a lot of people are involved, but it's hard. You really need to shift, from a day-to-day marketer, a day-to-day salesperson, they really need to shift how they're spending their day-to-day. So that's a real challenge. Where I've seen it be successful was where we had a single champion. It was in our CMO, came in and championed the change from the start, presented all the data, focused first on aligning across leadership so that both marketing and sales enablement even was involved and fully onboarded to the concept of the change. I was involved in helping to really make sure that we have the right data to support this conversation, starting to talk about, okay, how do we understand where our accounts are in the buying journey? But then even, under her team, it was all that she talked about for 6 months. It wasn't just, hey, this is the thing we're going to do, go do it. It was steady drumbeat of, we understand this is difficult, but this is the direction we're going. We have to go, because if we don't, here's the data to show you why it's not going to work. And so not only did we achieve this transformation, we did it in 6 months, which is crazy. I will say, I think everyone involved looks back on those 6 months with some tough memories. It wasn't easy, because there's a whole thing. You have to build a whole new set of content, really, when you're thinking about aligning your marketing campaigns to the buyer journey, right? There's a whole lot of work that needs to be done. But we did. Were we totally there? No. Was it a phase one? Do we have to keep? But it was a huge transformation, and having been through it now a couple of times, I will fully attribute it to having that alignment and that champion.
No, that's, I think 6 months is incredible to achieve, and because it sets the stepping stone for next changes. Because when the mindset change, then it's more to do with amplification of the efforts, from one thought process to, multiple, and then amplifying. In the entire thing, while you were narrating that, you mentioned that sales and marketing alignment has been, always, discussed, in high-level discussions everywhere. But in a buyer-led world, what does this alignment really looks like?
That's a really great question. The biggest challenge, and I think, and it shouldn't be, but the biggest challenge I've seen is making sure that we're all targeting the same accounts and that we all have the same expectations. What you can see sometimes coming from marketing or sales is, hey, here's the list of accounts that we're going to want to target. I want to target this year. Here's my, my top accounts. What is the data that's used to identify those list of top accounts? Are they in market? Or was it just, hey, this is a really cool sounding name that I want to get on my list this year, or it's big, or it has XYZ criteria that would fit our solution. But maybe they're already a customer of another vendor, and their contract isn't up this year, right? Or or maybe they just are nowhere near, and they have other priorities this year and for their budget, and they're not in the market at all. So I think really making sure that the biggest misalignment is you have marketing over here doing their thing. But then that means no good if then we're going to be working on trying to reach these accounts and engaging them and trying to get them so that we're top of mind. But then when they come in, if sales is focused on a whole nother group, all of a sudden work is, our work is not effective or efficient anymore. So I think it's just so critical, because it is as we've kind of alluded to, the buyer journey is not linear. One of my favorite, this little side comment, but kind of talking about how we've achieved alignment in the past on these sort of transformations. It's so simple. I think the most effective tool that we've used in helping to have this conversation with sales and help them understand of, hey, the buyer journey is not linear anymore, and we need to be working together, is to build out and this was, again, a tool that was suggested by my previous boss, build a timeline of of a couple customer journeys. Map their engagements with different marketing activities, map their engagements with sales. And you will see it, is all over the map. You're going to have, they might be engaging with top of funnel content and then some bottom of funnel, and then go back to top. They might have talked with a salesperson at an event, or, exchange an email with a salesperson here, but then not until 9 months later are they potentially coming back for an opportunity. whatever it may be, but just putting that all on paper and presenting it, to letting just the visual tell the story of what we mean, of, hey, we think this is what we think is happening, but look at the reality. And also look of, hey, all this activity reflects the activity of 10 different people, right? Or, and potentially even if you're a multi-business unit company, we've seen some situations where they're even overlapping campaigns where you're like, that doesn't really even make sense to me. But again, every account is unique. So I think just really having that, providing that visual was the most effective tool. By the way, that visual is also very great in an attribution conversation when you're talking about where to give credit, and you look at the 50 different touch points that you're showing and say, oh, tell us who should get credit for this. That's the side benefit. But, when just take a couple of your recent customers, map out their journey, and that alone will tell the story for you and make the argument for you.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very, very important point for me, is that mapping out those, sales and, marketing journeys, and seeing the touch points, and, understanding that, or rather than predicting what could be the next point. I mean, mapping the real, behavior, and, that is one thing that I always find, fascinating, is that many organizations map, what the buyers want to take, and not necessarily the journey buyers actually want to take. They want to map the journey, but they don't map it to what actually buyers would do. How do you distinguish assumptions from reality in a situation like this?
That is actually a great lead-in for one of my favorite examples that I use, particularly when talking to marketers, because I think, the example of that is, I will have a marketer come to me and talk to me about their campaign or program. And they said, okay, we have we're going to, across these couple channels for a month, we're going to do this top of funnel content. And then we're going to start introducing them to middle of funnel content. And then, we're going to get bottom of funnel, and we're going to expecting to see, MQLs and pipeline, for reflecting the buyer journey. I'm building a buyer journey focused campaign, but it's not a buyer journey led campaign. But what I tell them, again, so as I head up our marketing operations. So not only am I helping build this stuff internally, I myself am also a B2B buyer. I buy marketing technology. And I like to say I'm probably one of the worst buyers, because I know both sides of the coin. So I can be very picky about kind of what I expect out of my buyer experience. But my example is, I think probably 2 roles ago, I might have potentially followed a more of a traditional funnel at that point, but I learned about a tool that, I had a need and identified, and I think I evaluated a couple different tools and decided on this one as, this is what I need. I'm all in, I'm convinced. Unfortunately, as we talked about, that alone doesn't lead to a sale. There were budget shifts and internal strategy shifts that just prevented me from being able to pull the trigger and actually bring that on board. But that has stayed with me. That tool still exists. I know it can still bring a ton of value. And in both of my last roles, I have come in and said, we need this. This is something we need. And unfortunately, in both situations, we've been in more of a, MarTech consolidation period than a expanding. So it just wasn't the right time to be able to invest in the tool as much as I wanted it and we needed it. And but so I am there. And as soon as I have the budget, I am ready to pull the trigger on this tool. That's where I am as a buyer. I get emails from this tool, from these poor salespeople, and I get frustrated because I am not ready to buy. Yes, I am fully convinced they don't have to do anything, but their most amazing email or a wonderful marketing campaign isn't going to change my reality. It is, I am leading the journey, and I am there. I am all convinced, but I do not want to if I am not ready, and I'm not doing research, I'm not out there like searching the tool every day and dreaming about it. Maybe I would, but not actually doing it. So there's no signs that this is a tool that I'm interested in. So there should be no intent out there, but they're cold calling me, and it's like, I already know I would love you, but I just can't. And that's why I'll talk to fellow marketers often, and some of our sales teams, and it's all contextual, and we need to meet our buyers where they are. And even someone that is, I am all in, I believe it's a valuable tool. You don't have to do any convincing. It's just right. The time is right.
Absolutely. And if you look at it, the human element or the challenges around, what a human being faces on day-to-day basis do impact their, day-to-day buying decisions, or, the things that they want to consume. And this becomes very, very difficult for, the marketing folks. Because, how do we navigate those things? It could be budget issues. It could be, the technology not, fitting in, probably, migration from one system to another. There's so many things that come. And if we have to look at, if we are redesigning around buyers, so, we have to look at it. My question is around the matrix that matters. If we really want to redesign around buyers, then probably we need to think like, how we measure success. What matrix do you believe, best reflect, the buyer's progress today?
That's a great question. And it's a bit tricky, right? I would say, I think it's about, making sure that you first have a clearly defined buyer audience, right? And again, and I kind of alluded to that before. You need to be aligned across sales and marketing of who are our target accounts, and where are they in their journey? And that is hard. There is a whole lot of debate and conversation around intent data. I think right now it's the best we have. I don't think it's the be all end all. But I think, thinking about like the six senses of the world and others that help you kind of map as far as, okay, where is my account in their journey? I think that is a real good indicator. I think you also need to look at your own first party data as well to do that. So one, it's just understanding who are our target accounts, where are they in their journey. But the way I think about it even more is because you're not, as we've talked about, we're not going to necessarily be able to progress someone down the funnel any faster than they're ready to. So I think from a marketing and sales perspective, I think it's twofold. I'm always thinking about it from a marketing lens. But I think the same could apply for sales. One, if we look at, hey, here's our target accounts. First, I would then look, okay, what percentage of those accounts are we actually engaging, right? So, hey, over this period of time, we've been targeting these accounts. How many of them have actually responded and have engaged in some way with our activity? And then of those that are engaging, how many are we able to then progress to opportunities in pipeline, right? So it's more of an account level. But yeah, you're not going to, and I think, and the best you can do, that you're not going to have a set, conversion rate. I think you're going to have to learn kind of what your internal benchmarks are. Cause every company will be unique, but, really thinking about that, of thinking about, okay, how many, what percentage of each of these accounts and these groups are we engaging and progressing? And then as far as success or attribution from, hey, what role is marketing playing versus what role is sales playing? I think the key to that is first clearly defining what the expectations, for each role is, right? Again, we talked about, because it's not about sourcing or anything. It's a fully, we need to be working hand in hand, but each team has their role. So what are those roles? And let's align KPIs there. But then also from a marketing perspective, one thing I'm trying to shift to, and this is, guided by some Forrester thought processes, et cetera, is we want to, we talk about showing the impact of marketing. And, hopefully we're at the point where we're no longer having the conversation that says we need to prove the value of marketing. Instead, the question is, why do we want marketing in the conversation, right? Why do we want marketing there? And so the ways to look at that is not as far as, okay, what percentage of pipeline came from marketing or was marketing influence, but hey, let's look at all the accounts and the opportunities that had marketing engagement and had a certain threshold of marketing engagement, and how do those behave differently than those that didn't, right? And actually what we see often in the data is, hey, accounts that have been really engaged and marketing has been engaging throughout the buyer journey, 10 or more times, 5 or more times, 20 or more times, whatever that may be, has higher win rates, maybe has higher deal sizes, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just about shifting the conversation, but it's not it's not perfect yet. Again, I go back to marketing is hard, and marketing analytics and reporting is hard. That's why we do it. That's why we love it.
Absolutely. I would put it in a way that marketing is hard and marketing analytics is even harder. To get, from the sources to the clicks to the, the connect to the touch points, it is difficult to track, engage.
I literally had one of my colleagues yesterday was just telling me this story of in a past life at a previous company. She worked with someone who was trained to literally be a rocket scientist. So had a rocket science background. And she literally said, marketing attribution, I am a rocket scientist, and marketing attribution is too much for me. Like not even a rocket scientist could do this. So, we try our best. But we do what we can.
No, I completely agree because, sometimes marketing cannot be done through the logical mind. Probably, the most logical thing, a marketer will not do it. That is where the creativity comes into picture. The logical mind cannot, I would say that, people who look logical, not all the marketers are logical. They go with their gut feel. They go with what the data is guiding them, what's happening. And then they just, jump on the opportunity which they feel is right.
Yeah. It's a shift in terminology that I have championed in the past is everyone likes to say data driven, right, but it really needs to be data informed because the data does not tell us everything. And often the data can mislead us. Right. There is, because, when we're thinking about, even from an attribution perspective, or certain channels are easier to track than others. So they're going to look more effective than others, or you're going to have different budgets or all this context that needs to be taken into account. And even thinking about that at the broader scale of the success of a buyer-led journey and, the involvement of marketing, sales and all, there's so much context there. We need to be, I think some organizations probably need to be a little bit more data informed than they are. They need to root themselves more in data than they are. But the data alone, especially today, given AI, given, something that we're all long familiar with now at this point, but GDPR and other, privacy, challenges, we can't see the whole picture. We need to bring our own creativity and our own judgment and context to any data that we're looking at.
Okay, and do you think that we are finally moving beyond the obsession of MQLs or content syndicated leads? or they still have a place, when used correctly? This is a debatable question, though.
It's a difficult question. I think I like how you phrase the latter part of that, because I think that is the case. So I already spoke around where I think MQLs will forever have a place. I do think in that inbound, that individual lead inbound. Beyond that, I don't know that MQLs have a place. I do see it more of we need to shift more to thinking about a full account. And then, same content syndication. Again, I think it's I have this conversation at every organization I join. There is the desire, content syndication, their leads, let's send them to sales. And that even the content syndication vendors tell you that's not what our leads are. And yet we still are, because it's just easy. And again, it's not, and I'm not, it's not, there's reasons for it, but hey, these are people engaging with our content. But, I think if we are bringing in content syndication leads and they are then nurtured and they are then brought into, to existing campaigns, and just we can use it to expand our database of who we're reaching out to. But the expectation of, hey, I'm throwing them in the funnel and I'm going to be seeing them convert, at X speed, at X conversion rate down the funnel is not the place for it. So I think there are certainly areas where the traditional funnel will still be relevant. But I think there's different lanes, right, of where we're going to be. I think there's going to be some situations where, we have that more traditional funnel, and others where, largely where we need to focus is that buyer-led and focus on meeting our buyers where they are. But again, content syndication could help you, the right content syndication vendors these days can help you find the right buyers, right? Say, hey, these buyers are on market. Here's more contacts for you to get in front of. But yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Everybody says that they want to become, the customer, or rather the buyer centric, but very few do it successfully. What are the biggest mistake you see companies making, or from your own experience?
Yeah, I do. As I alluded to before, I again really think it's about the alignment and the championing internally from a people level. You can have, because yes, and even if you have a great champion in marketing and all of marketing is on board, if sales isn't and the rest of the go-to-market organization, again, you're only going to get so far, right? And so again, that's where I've seen unfortunately situations where, marketing has a strategy, but then if it doesn't align with sales, you get to the point, you nurture these accounts, you hand them over, because there is still a handoff at some points. And they don't progress them because they don't align with their strategy. So I think alignment beyond just like thinking about the full go-to-market organization and beyond just marketing or sales is really critical. And I think the real key to that success is having a very an effective champion to support that.
Absolutely. I think we all already spoke about this, that, having the mindset and championing the entire, a strong, thought process in getting that alignment. That's the biggest mistake the companies are doing, that, they are not able to align. But, let's take a very practical question here. For leaders, listening today, any leader or an aspiring leader listening today, what's one thing that they should stop doing from tomorrow?
Stop doing.
In the entire scheme of things that we are talking about, probably one thing that they should stop doing, and one thing that they should start doing.
That's a great question. I think an easy one is, I think it's about if we're trying to encourage change, you have to shift what we're focusing on, and the first thing that a marketer or a salesperson is going to find important is the metrics that are being discussed. So I think we need to look closely at the metrics that we're discussing. We've talked about MQLs. In both situations, we've made a decision of we are not publishing MQL data anymore. Certainly it's data that we look at and we evaluate, and there has a role for us internally in marketing. But as far presenting a MQL volume data, volume metric, for example, of, hey, we brought in X number of MQLs, that immediately encourages the wrong activity on the marketer side, right? Because they're trying, then they try to work towards the MQL, and they try, and everyone tries to game the system. And then, from a sales side, they're then thinking about volume of, hey, are you giving me enough volume of leads to work? As opposed to, are you giving me the right leads to work? So one thing I would do is I would stop presenting MQL data. Doesn't mean that you stop tracking it and looking at it, but presenting it, sharing it out as a KPI would be number one. Number two, as far as so that would be what I would stop. What I would start doing is understanding your audience and your accounts and understanding where they are and start having alignment conversations across marketing and sales. Because again, if you're not aligned on which accounts you're targeting and why you're targeting those accounts and targeting the right accounts and not just, hey, that's a cool name, but hey, this group of accounts is, yes, here's our full TAM, but here's the accounts that are actually in market that really make sense for us to focus on right now. And hey, marketing will focus on the rest of the TAM to try to, so that when they come in market, they're ready. But beginning those discussions. So understanding what data you have access to understand where your accounts are, and then having those discussions with go-to-market leaders.
Completely. And understanding what stage you are in the entire, the buyer-centric journey, and then, working probably backwards to figure out that how do you move this into more exciting conversations and add real value to the relationship.
Yeah.
Okay, looking ahead, probably between 1 to 3 years from now, I know 1 to 3 years is too big of a time frame because at the speed the things are changing, we don't know what's going to be in next 90 days. But looking ahead, how do you, see the GTM evolving?
It's a great question, and you're right. I think it is evolving quickly right now. Obviously, I can't believe we've talked this whole time, and the word AI hasn't come up at all. Maybe it came up once, but AI hasn't come up at once. But obviously, we don't even know how that's going to transform. We're obviously already seeing it in how buyers research, and get their information and educate themselves. From a marketing perspective, I think the obvious piece that we all know is I think that's going to really shift how websites are used and managed. Because are the websites still really the place where, and the source for, where our buyers are doing their research, or is it within an LLM? So that's a big unknown. So I think how we reach, from a marketing perspective, how we reach our buyers is going to shift significantly. And that's going to be I think that's going to be the big change. I do think, we've been talking about the buyer-led journey for a long time, but I think in reality, I think less companies are there than we think. So, I think at least in the near future, I expect we're going to continue, hopefully, to see that transformation. Because it's difficult, right? Particularly for older companies, there's a whole lot of institutional, knowledge and pushback that will happen there that makes that a challenge. So I think it's, I think at least for the time being, I think there's still a lot to do and a lot of work to be had in this buyer-led journey. But I think AI is just gonna, I don't know, beyond how, the buyer research is. That, that's kind of where I can think about AI today, but who knows? Yeah, you're right. 90 days and, 6 months, maybe it's also even changing how they're really engaging with sales. and actually
Absolutely.
make interest on that funnel. It's
Right.
purge my brain and thinking about that.
Absolutely, and this is what the marketers are really facing for the inbound leads. The challenge, all the major search engines, with the AI mode, most of the information is available on the AI mode, so the clicks are not there. The
Yeah.
journeys are not happening from the search engines to the landing pages of the site. That has become a real concern for marketers. Getting an inbound lead. Inbound lead. They are looking at multiple opportunities to create more visibility so that they are right in front of the buying group. That is one problem that needs to be solved at this point in time. I think so.
Very much so. I mean, it's hard to, again, owning the reporting. We look at our web data, and we are not alone. And the quantity metrics are shifting for sure.
It is.
As so I think for right now, we're really focusing on the quality, right? On those conversions, on the forms fills that we're getting, et cetera, time on site, kind of, at least right now, but the full strategy for a B2B website will need to shift.
Right.
For sure.
No, absolutely. And I feel that I was talking to one of the, marketing directors, and, she said that it's like, it's a situation where you have to be very calm, understand, slow down, because when you slow down, that is when you start producing more great quality of work, which will resonate with your, the buyers or the prospects. And, you should slow down the entire marketing activities to reflect more, so that, you are able to get hold of things that you really want.
I know. I love that. And that's a conversation we've had, quality over quantity in all of these different worlds, right? Obviously from a metric, like what we're looking at from a metrics perspective, but even from a content, right? Because again, just having more content out there is not, and you don't have to have new content every quarter, because the same buyer is not, and even honestly, even myself, again, as a buyer, I can probably see the same piece of content twice, a couple months apart, and wouldn't even know. Right. If it's, altered slightly, but if it's good content, that's going to be more impactful to me than just trying to generate as much volume as possible. Right. Let's get the right content and the right, out at the right channels in front of the right people. That's what matters. And if you reuse that content, or, reuse that campaign, or have that campaign run longer, not everyone, I think the big shift, right, that I like to talk to about marketers is, maybe to close the loop here, is remind marketers and salespeople that the buyer is not thinking about you every single day, all the time. You are a small little speck in their day to day, and they're not going to remember the email that you sent last week. They're not. They're not going to remember that, hey, I saw that same piece of content, and now therefore I'm ready for this piece of content. We're not that important to them, unfortunately, until they decide that we are, and then we need to go full steam ahead. But in the meantime, unfortunately, it's just about getting in front of them.
No, absolutely. The attention span has gone so low that, even, as consumers to the content, we don't realize that, what we watched, say, about, 6 hours back, if you're, scrolling or moving, unless something really touches us in terms of either solving a problem or elevating our, life, that is when we tend to remember. Very fascinating conversation. Amazing. Let's change gears. This is quick rapid fire.
Okay.
It's very simple. First thing that comes to your mind just by hearing the, question, give us the answer, just to have a little element of fun.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Now, funnel or buyer journey in 2026?
Buyer journey.
One metric. I completely agree. And as buyers, we have evolved. One metric you would remove forever.
I think I said that before. That would be MQLs. I would say MQLs, or if you want a different answer, marketing sourced pipeline.
Ah,
That I would,
that's
the
interesting.
concept of sourcing is I think just such a nomenclature. Going back to my depiction of a timeline, right? How do you define what a source is? So I have
No,
twofold
that's a
answer.
very interesting, very interesting take. A marketing tool, or rather a martech tool, you can't live without.
Um, okay, this isn't a Martech tool, but it is a tool that literally I have brought with me I think probably for the past 15 years. And it is a little Excel add-in called AbleBits. And it basically allows, so in marketing operations, we still, even in 2026, and even in my role today, I end up having to do you're doing data analysis from a reporting perspective, or you're cleaning up a database, or cleaning up big Excel of contacts or cross-referencing. And AbleBits is like, I say VLOOKUP on steroids, and it lets you support all of that. And it is very affordable. And so literally every time I enter a new company, I said, first thing I need to buy this $100 add-in. It's very cheap, but I cannot live without it.
Give me the name again.
AbleBits.
AbleBits.
AbleBits. So AbleBits. It's a small little add-in, but I live and die by it.
Interesting. One recent hack or workflow that made your life easier.
I don't know that I have an answer there. I think because I think it's hard because it's all AI, right? I think all we're doing all day, every day is, and I will say myself more so, and probably I'm certainly further behind in unlocking everything that AI can do from a marketing operations perspective. But all day, every day, experimenting and learning how AI can make my life easier. So I don't know that I don't really have a straight answer for you there. I think just because it's every day I'm unlocking a new thing that AI can help me automate or make a little bit easier for me. So
No, I think that's a very honest answer. One could give recent hack or workflow. Yeah, that is very honest that, the AI is the one, I'm learning, playing around, trying to figure out that, what is the best way to use it, how it can help, all of us make our life easier.
Yeah. And you hear a lot of, I think it's a commentary that I've had with other marketing leaders is you see a lot on LinkedIn of like, oh, I used AI to build, I have my whole marketing team and I've connected all these different platforms. That is awesome, but that's often at very small companies, right? Where there are no enterprise checks and balances. And, it's a different world than, working in, a large enterprise level organization where you have IT, you have your security team, you have all sorts, and you also have a big complex marketing organization. And it's not quite as easy to automate some of that stuff. One, maybe your data isn't ready, but two, also it's a different environment to be doing so. So I think it's a nice reality check that I've needed as a marketing leader of different worlds. You feel like you're behind, you see that post, or you feel like you're behind, but it's a whole different set of circumstances.
No, it is, and we live in a world where whatever is seen, it creates a great impact. But I believe that we all have to wrestle with AI, to test the entire the objective that we want to play around with. Even within my team, people do come up with the AI led plans, and while looking at the plans, I know that they haven't put a thought to it. Because from the ground reality to the big big scale, it is different.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We say what we've been saying lately is just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Absolutely.
And just because AI can do it, should it? And should you be the one that is driving that.
Amazing.
Yeah.
One book that, you recommend all the GTM leaders or marketing folks to read or should read?
Good question. I think I'm going to go with an oldie, and it's not specific to go to market. I would just as a leader. I think but I think it also aligns with the buyer journey conversation that we've been having today. Is Start with Why by Simon Sinek. So it's 10 plus. It's quite a bit old, but it's really about and particularly where I've been talking about championing, the importance of having a champion and the people transformation. It really talks about, understanding your own why and your team's why and why behind what they are doing, and using, and that is the key to a successful leader. So it's an oldie, but I love it.
Old is gold, like they say. Those are the original thoughts. Probably, the AI was not writing it. So I think, that is more.
Exactly.
All right. As a marketers, we are consumed by our own thoughts 24/7. And that's a fact. We are always trying to solve a problem. Outside work, what resets or recharges you?
Great question. I have a dog named Harold. So end of every day, I end my day with a walking him outside. And it serves just as a really nice disconnect between, particularly in this day and age when so many of us work from home, and it's really hard to disconnect work from your regular life. I like having that ritual, get outside, walk my pup, have the time with him, and that serves as a nice transition between the two.
Amazing. Caroline, this has been a very fascinating conversation. One thing that really stood out for me, around the entire buyer ecosystem that we are talking, that buyers don't move through our funnel. We need to learn and experiment to move along with them. Thank you for sharing your experience and lessons and leading this transformation across multiple organizations.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
We are signing off from this episode of Data Demand, but the journey doesn't end here. Stay tuned to MarTech 360 for more insights and strategies that can help you master the MarTech landscape.